Hello, everyone, and welcome to the last episode of Bigfoot Rescue Squad. We hope you have enjoyed the story so far. You can purchase the complete audiobook, ebook, or paperback book on our website, alwaysopenbooks.com. I will link it below. Our next story will be posted in September, so subscribe to our channel so that you don't miss the next adventure. Thank you for listening, and have a great day. Chapter 6. The spaceship shot into the sky, and I could feel the G-forces pull my face back as we broke through the atmosphere. We were one step closer to getting Bob back. I looked at Yeti and Skunk to see how they were faring. Their smiles were being exaggerated by the G-forces. I started to feel woozy. My motion sickness started to get the better of me. I looked at Karen. "Everything okay, Bigfoot?" she asked. I nodded. I was afraid to open my mouth to answer in case I threw up. I still owed her a purse. I didn't want my debt to grow. "I put a plastic bag on the arm of your chair. Don't hesitate to use it." I smiled at her, and it was genuine. I was grateful for Karen's long memory. The ship started to level off, and we stopped moving so quickly. I took a deep breath and felt my nausea subside. I heard the engines grow quieter. We were in space. "We must have broken through Earth's atmosphere," I said. Yeti and Skunk looked at each other with huge smiles. "You know what that means," said Yeti. "I do," said Skunk as he high-fived Yeti. "Zero gravity." They both unhooked their seatbelts and began to float through the spaceship. Yeti did several flips, and Skunk pretended to hang 10. Even Karen decided to join in. She floated through the ship in a reclining pose with one hand holding up her head and the other with her phone. "Come on, Bigfoot, join us," said Karen. I had been waiting for someone to ask. I was out of my seat in no time, doing somersaults and pretending to swim through the ship. I looked out the window to see Earth getting smaller behind us. Skunk came up beside me. The vastness of space. He looked around to make sure no one was listening. "I find it terrifying," he said. I nodded. "Me too." "I thought you loved space, Skunk. You are always talking about the universe and how mysterious it is." "I do love the universe, but new things terrify me." He leaned against the spaceship. "Everyone thinks I don't have a care in the world and everything is so easy for me, but it isn't. You always meet a challenge head on and you never back down. You know it's because of you that I keep trying things even when I am afraid. Do you remember my first show I played in? I would have never had the courage to go on stage without your support. So even though going to Mars is scary, no matter what this adventure throws my way, I'm going to tackle it head on." I put my arm around Skunk and we gazed out the window in comfortable silence. Karen floated by with a notebook in hand, waving it at us. It seemed our moment of contemplation had come to an end. "I just want to briefly discuss our plan for landing on Mars," she said. "What is there to discuss?" asked Yeti as he was standing upside down on his head. "We land on Mars, we get Bob, and we get out." "Yes, but that isn't taking into account that NASA will be getting there around the same time as we do. We need to land out of view near this small mountain range away from NASA's space camp. I think that is where Bob is living, according to the pictures I have here." She showed a whole folder of pictures of Mars and the base camp. "These weren't on the news. How did you get your hands on these?" I asked. Karen flipped her hair. "There is a Karen who works in NASA who owed me a favor. She showed us a picture of the caves on the backside of the planet. I think this area here is where we should start looking for Bob." "Alert, alert, landing system malfunction. Repeat, landing system malfunction." "That can't be good," I said. "No, it isn't," said Karen. "The landing system is essential. We need it to land on Mars without taking any damage to the ship. We can't take the risk of us all being stranded on Mars." "What are we going to do?" asked Yeti. "Let me take a look," said Karen. She went to the control panel and started running some tests. I looked out the window and noticed that one of the antennas was hanging on by a thread. "Karen, is that supposed to look like that?" I pointed to the antenna. She gasped. "No, it must have come loose when we took off. We have to fix that before we get within Mars' gravitational pull." She looked out the window and then at us. "Someone has to go out there and repair it." We all looked at each other. "It can't be Yeti. He is too big. The tether won't support his weight. I have to stay in here and guide whoever is fixing it. And then Bigfoot needs to steer the ship when the autopilot is disengaged." We turned and looked at the only person it could be. "I'll do it," Skunk said, as if it was the most natural thing in the world to go out into space and to fix an antenna. "Everyone has a job to do. It has to be me." "Okay, but we need a replacement antenna. Everyone start looking around for something we can use." We all started moving around the ship, gathering anything we thought would be helpful to rebuild the antenna dish. Yeti found a bowl from the kitchen, Skunk found a screwdriver, I found a metal spatula under my seat, and Karen found some rope. We can make a dish antenna from these. She started to put the pieces together. Bigfoot, help Skunk attach the tether to his suit. We don't want him floating away. We went to the back of the ship to adjust the tether to his spacesuit. It was from the 1960s, but everything still worked. Yeti made some modifications to the suit to make sure his oxygen supply was working. Can you move around okay? I asked. Put your hands in the air, Yeti said. Now shake them like you just don't care. Skunk did so, and he and Yeti shared a laugh. Karen, how does the screen on his arm work? I asked. She came over to us and pushed a few buttons. That bar there indicates how much oxygen you have left. That's the only one you need to pay attention to. Okay, will do. Are you nervous? I asked. He nodded. I think this might be the scariest thing I've ever done, Skunk said. You can do it. I smiled at him. You're the bravest skunk ape I know. Okay, we are going into the main part of the ship. I have to seal the hatch, and then once we open the door, you go out and fix the dish antenna. Yeti will be watching your tether, and you can talk to Karen through your helmet. Make sure to let us know if anything is wrong. I checked the cord that connected him to the suit and to the ship one more time. Do you have any questions? No, I'm ready. We went back to the main ship and closed the hatch. We gave Skunk a thumbs up through the window. We all held our breath as he took the first step into space. Karen was on the radio. How's it looking out there, Skunk? She asked. You know, spacey, he said. Okay, you want to make your way along the ship. There should be some handholds for you as you go. Use those to get to the broken antenna. Okay, I see them. We watched him steadily make his way along the ship. Halfway up the ship, he stopped and was huffing. Yeti, I think if I keep doing eating competitions with you, I'll have to go to the gym as well. He wiped his brow. I am out of shape. He took a minute to catch his breath. You've got this, buddy. Pretend there is a 1965 Fender Duosonic electric guitar waiting for you, Yeti said. We saw Skunk pick up the pace. Yeti clearly knew how to motivate him. Skunk was only a few handholds away when one of them broke and he was hanging on for dear life. Hurry, grab another handhold, Karen yelled. We saw Skunk flailing around out of there like a fish out of water. Guys, I'm scared, he said as he tried to swing his body to another hold. Guitar! Screamed Yeti, and Skunk pulled himself up to safety. We all took a sigh of relief. I'm at the antenna, we heard over the radio. Okay, Skunk, tell me what you see, Karen asked. A broken dish antenna, said Skunk. I should have seen that one coming, Karen said. Okay, Skunk, take the broken dish antenna out and replace it with the spatula. This is turning out to be pretty easy. Beep, beep, alert, alert. Small meteorites heading this way. Please adjust course. Karen looked at the controls. Guys, what was that? Skunk asked. Skunk, I need you to hold on to the ship as tight as possible. Meteorites are coming our way. Bigfoot, get us out of here. Got it. I ran to the captain's chair, disengaged the autopilot, and quickly dodged a meteorite at the last second. Skunk's tether became loose and it was hanging on by a thread. Grab the tether, Yeti, said Karen. I had to make a few more evasive maneuvers, which I knew wasn't fun for Skunk on the outside of the ship. I'm beginning to feel sick out here, Skunk said with the sound of nauseousness in his voice. Listen carefully. Yeti, hang on to the tether so that Skunk can fix the satellite dish. Bigfoot, hold the ship steady for a minute. Skunk, you need to fix the dish as fast as you can. Karen barked her orders. Aye, aye, Captain, we all said in unison. Yeti held on as hard as he could, and Skunk was already beginning to fix the dish. I kept the ship as steady as I could. I sure was glad we had watched all those Star Journey episodes for research purposes. It was just another minute before we heard the message. Guidance system re-engaged, the spaceship told us. Skunk, you fixed the dish antenna, Karen said. We will pull you back in. Righteous, we heard Skunk say over the radio. That was a close one, Karen said. Yeti, safely pull him back in. We opened the hatch immediately and welcomed Skunk back into the spaceship. That was amazing, Yeti said and hugged Skunk. I wasn't worried at all. I patted Skunk on the back. How did you do that? I asked. I tapped into the universe, man. Like I am always saying, the universe has a plan. Well, next time tell the universe not to have such a dangerous plan, Karen said. The rest of the flight was smooth sailing, and we made it to Mars with everyone anticipating what would happen next. We broke through Mars' atmosphere without a problem and landed on the north side using the mountains to hide our spaceship from NASA. We all put on our space helmets and got ready to walk on Mars. Karen, how do I unfog this thing? I asked as I pointed to the helmet. She sighed and jiggled the helmet for me until it locked into place. I'm going to have to design a better latch. These helmets are so finicky. You didn't have it on right, she said. You would have made it about 30 seconds before you started to suffocate. She laughed, but I didn't find that funny. I'm glad we only have to wear these when we are outside, Yeti chimed in. He was also having trouble with his helmet. Karen moved on to help him and then Skunk. Thanks. Everybody good? I asked, and Karen inspected all our suits. We opened up the spaceship door, got out, and looked around. Which way should we go? Yeti asked. From the pictures I have, she pointed toward the highest mountain in the range. He should be in one of those caves below. We started walking towards the mountains when Skunk tilted his head to the side. Do you hear that? He asked. We looked at each other. No, we didn't hear anything, Skunk. What is it? I asked. He army crawled up a hill and we followed. That's what I thought. We are not alone. I inched up the hill with the others only to discover what he was talking about was NASA had beaten us here. They were unloading equipment from their ship into the base camp. It looks like they got here a lot sooner than we did, I said. Yeah, and they are really close to Bob. We have to find him fast and get out of here. How did they get so far ahead of us? Yeti asked. Their ships must be faster than ours. I would love to get a look at their blueprints. Karen pressed Yeti's head below the rocks where we were hiding. Stay down or they'll see us, Karen whispered. We all inched down the hill and headed toward the mountains. Look for any sign that a Bigfoot has been here, I said. Everyone was on high alert. We knew we had to get in and out of here fast or we would all be discovered. Does that look like a pizza box to you? Karen asked. She picked it up and examined it. It looked like there was still a morsel of melted cheese in it. I think we are on the right track. Keep going. We continued towards the cave. Is that a footprint? Yeti asked. I bent down to examine it with him. We both smiled at each other. Bob, we said in unison. I can easily track him from here, said Yeti. We followed him along some rocks until we got to a large cave. It was right below the tallest mountain like Karen had predicted. We wandered into the cave slowly. You never want to startle a fellow cryptid. Bob, I said. Bob, are you here? It's us. There was no answer. Do you think he will remember us? Asked Skunk. It's only been 100 years, Skunk. I think he will remember us. He probably isn't home right now, said Karen. Let's look around. Maybe there is a clue as to where he went or when he will be back. Is that a rover in the corner? I asked. I bet Bob had some interesting stories to tell us about Mars, and I couldn't wait to hear them. We looked around the mountain cave. Bob had really made it feel like home. He had sculpted a mud couch and TV, and then there was a nice fire pit. I sat on the mud couch, and in my line of sight were 5 small clay figures. I pointed to them. Hey, look at those. Are they wearing watches? Yeah, they are. Those clay figures kind of look like us, said Yeti. See, Skunk, Bob didn't forget us. He patted Skunk on the shoulder, and they joined me on the couch. Are those potato plants over there? Asked Karen. She walked over and examined them. I believe they are. Nice job, Bob. Way to be resourceful. We heard movement outside of the cave. Bob was coming, or at least I hoped it was him. I felt butterflies in my stomach. I had so much to say and to apologize for. I hoped he would forgive me. Being alone all this time couldn't have been easy. What if he didn't forgive us? Maybe this wasn't going to go as we planned. Bob came running into the cave, yelling with a large rock over his head, ready to end us. Growl, he said. He looked around with the rock still ready to be hurled at us at any moment. Hey man, said Skunk. Long time no see. Bob dropped the rock and looked at us, all dumbstruck. Are you really here? How? He touched my fur with his fingertips and stepped back. You are real. He jumped into my arms and we hugged. I thought I might never see you all again. He was now hugging Skunk, Yeti, and then Karen. I am so happy to see you all. How did you find me? I have so many questions. What is Earth like now? Bob would have kept going with his questions if we hadn't interrupted him. We found you because of these. Karen pulled out her pictures from NASA and showed them to Bob. You definitely are not the best at hide and seek anymore. I think you forgot the hide part entirely. She giggled. Remember when you hid from Krill? You claimed you were the king of hide and seek. You even bet a month's worth of chores that he couldn't find you. Karen squealed in delight. And then he made you do my chores too. Oh, those were good times, Bob. She clapped him on the back. After a moment of reminiscing, Karen said, but if we spotted you in these pictures, it's just a matter of time before someone else will notice you. That seemed to snap him out of his happy delirium. Right, let's leave at once. Let me grab my things. He paused. He went to the clay figures and took off their watches and handed them to each of us. He smiled. In case we need to keep in touch with each other. You never know what could happen. Where are you parked? On the north side, so NASA wouldn't see us. Good thinking, Karen. There is an escape passage in the back. It should take us right to the ship. Safety first. Bob and Karen smiled at each other. I had forgotten how well those two had gotten along. Lead the way, I said. I was smiling from ear to ear. It was so good to see him. I hoped he felt the same way. Did he still blame me? We followed him through the secret escape passage, and it came out right in front of the spaceship. We all boarded quickly. The sooner we got off Mars, the sooner we could put this all behind us. I pushed the ignition button, and nothing happened. That doesn't sound good. Karen raised her eyebrows. Bob looked at us defeated. I thought this might happen, he said. Mars gravity messes with the engines and fries the engine wires. You need to get new ones. Where are we going to get more wires? I asked. Bob scratched his head. Probably the base camp. I know they keep several in stock because this happens a lot. How do you know that? Karen asked. I could tell she was genuinely curious. Sometimes I borrow supplies from the freight and maybe someone told me about a storage warehouse. You know we aren't supposed to interact with humans, I told him. You could have been discovered. I was so lonely, and no one ever suspects to meet a Bigfoot on Mars anyway. Aren't you friends with a convenience store owner? Skunk pointed out. Now it was my turn to take the heat. Well, yeah, but Sal and I go way back. And besides, Karen talks to thousands of humans online every day. I sputtered. We all laughed. I guess we all talk to humans more than we are supposed to, I sighed. We had grown a lot since we left the village all those years ago. How will we get in? Karen crossed her arms, which was a sign she was ready for the plan. That's easy. As long as you keep your spacesuit on, no one suspects a thing. Here we can use the watches I made and search the base camp for the materials. He handed us each a watch. I don't know where everything is, but I have an idea of the layout. Great idea, Bob, I said. We can split up and cover the whole site. Where is your watch? Oh, I didn't have enough supplies left to make mine, Bob said. What did you make these out of? Asked Skunk as he admired his. I made them out of my spaceship and a few pieces of the dead rovers. I knew after a few years I was on my own and no one was coming for me, so I made the best out of the supplies I had. But I ran out of batteries when I got to mine. Well, you can come with me. That way we will be in touch with everyone at all times, I said. I didn't want to lose anyone ever again, and the fact that Bob made the watches meant he felt the same way. Okay, Bob said, but he didn't look thrilled about it. Just act like we belong. It is the first space tent before we enter the larger base camp. Our suits aren't the latest models. Do you think anyone will notice? Don't worry, Karen. No one thinks about strangers breaking into their space camp on Mars. He laughed. Chapter 7. We all nodded and headed for the base camp. There was a large building with 5 or 6 pods connected to it. Yeti, Skunk, and Karen were assigned to the outer pods, while Bob and I looked into the larger building. Remember to get in and out as quickly as possible. Try not to talk to anyone unless it's absolutely necessary. Everyone have their watches? They all nodded and held up their wrists to show me. Skunk, try it out for us. 10-4, good buddy, Skunk said. We could all hear the communication clearly. That was great, but I don't think you have to speak directly into the watch. I rubbed my ears. Any questions? I looked around, but no one said anything. Good luck, everyone. Bob and I watched everyone scatter to the pods. We could hear Skunk whistling as he went, and Yeti was already inside a pod. It sounded like a gym. Bob and I listened in on Yeti's conversation as we went to the main building. How much are you lifting, friend? We heard Yeti say. I was right. He was in the gym. Oh, not much, just pressing 250, said a male voice. Nice. Do you mind if I join? Yeti asked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I just told them not to talk to anyone that wasn't necessary. I looked at Bob, but he didn't seem to think Yeti's conversation was out of the ordinary. But then again, Bob hadn't talked to anyone in 100 years. You are benching 500 like it's nothing. What is your secret, man? Oh, you know, clean living. I heard Yeti's stomach rumble over the watch. Do you need a protein shake? I am Kevin, by the way, said the male voice. I'm Dave, said Yeti, and a protein shake would be great. Let's head to the kitchen then, and you can give me more tips on weightlifting. Well, at least you know what is in that pod, I told Bob. He was being quiet. Maybe it was because he was used to being alone for so long, but I remembered him being a lot chattier. Everything okay, I asked. Yeah, fine. Let's keep moving. I heard Skunk's whistling come to a stop. Aren't the stars beautiful? I heard an unfamiliar female voice say. Yeah, they sure are, Skunk said. I've never seen anything like this room before. How does it work? Are you controlling that giant telescope with that remote? Yeah, I use this controller to point the telescope to what I want to see in the sky, and then it's laser projected into the room, she explained. You're new here, right? Yeah, we just got here today. I could hear the quiver in his voice. He wasn't used to talking to girls. There were a few seconds of silence. Come on, Skunk, you can do it. Just imagine she is Karen. This is some nice music you've got playing there. Is that the Barmones? He asked. Way to go, man. I knew you could do it. You've heard of them? Yeah, I went to one of their concerts, Skunk said, and we heard the girl burst out laughing. I heard him fidgeting with his spacesuit. Keep cool. You're doing great. You just made her laugh. Sure you did. I think their last show was like 80 years ago. That's a good one. Yeah, he said sheepishly. It would have been cool if I had been there, though. The coolest, said the girl. You know another band that is great for stargazing are the Lloyds. Every time I see the stars, I go, oh, oh, oh. He was singing to this girl now. I can't believe you have heard of the Lloyds. I think you are the first person in 50 years who knows who they are. Ha ha, another good one. You are hilarious. She giggled. Hey, I have a craving for some chips. Do you want to go to the kitchen with me and look for some? Oh, bless this woman and her need for chips. At least Skunk would be able to search some more of the area. Sounds groovy. Let's go. Bob looked at me. Is everyone going to the kitchen? He asked. Do you think we should be worried about that? It will probably be fine. I am sure Yeti has his protein shake and they won't even see each other. Oh my goodness, this is wonderful, I heard Karen say. I heard typing. Is this your first time in the control room? Said a feminine voice. Yes, our ship arrived today. Oh, one of the newbies. Welcome to the control room. You can see everything from here. We have our state-of-the-art technologies. Some aren't even being used on Earth yet. Oh my God, I heard Karen say. What is it, aliens? She asked, and then laughed. Oh, you mean the Mars chili chip-off? Don't worry about that. It's just a way to initiate the new crew members. They will be fine. Hey bro, it looks like they are doing a Mars chili chip-off, said Kevin. You should totally do it. It looks like they found another recruit. Hi, my name's Dave, Yeti told Skunk. Skunk laughed. They must have met each other while he was going for a snack with that girl. Dave? What kind of a name is Dave? Skunk asked. It's a nice, reliable name. What's yours? Yeti asked as he crossed his arms. Skunk was quiet for a second before he responded. Chip, he said. Way to be original, Skunk. They were doing a chip-off and that was the best name he could come up with. So, are we going to do this or what, Chip? Yeti teased. I don't know. I heard the hesitation in his voice. Come on, you can do it. When are you going to get another chance to eat a Mars chili chip? Encouraged the girl from the observatory. Okay, I'm in, said Skunk, and cheers from the kitchen followed. This was turning into an event. I told those two to keep a low profile and half of the space station is watching them eat spicy food. Well, I guess that means there are less people we could run into. I looked at Bob. You can't take those two anywhere, I told him. Sounds like they haven't changed much. They are still the life of the party when you get them together. He didn't seem at all fazed by this, but he was more comfortable with the space crew. I guess I was the only one worried about what kind of chaos those two could create in a matter of moments. I pushed the anxiety away from my mind and focused on our mission. We need to hurry and find those wires, I said. Yeah, I bet those two don't last a minute with those Mars peppers, Bob smiled. After we entered the main building, we reached a split. I turned to Bob. Let's go left, I said. No, I think it's right. Let's go right, Bigfoot. Why do you think it's right? I asked. Maybe Bob had seen something I hadn't. Maybe because I know what I am doing. Did you ever think of that? I could tell that I had upset Bob, and I wanted to make it okay. I had a feeling that this wasn't about turning left or right. It was about much more. Listen, Bob, Bob cut me off. I don't want to talk about this now. Let's complete the mission. That is what we are here for anyway. We walked in silence until we came to an elevator. I pushed the button and we got in. Looks like there is an underground structure, I said, still trying to converse, but Bob wouldn't have it. He put his hands in his spacesuit and remained silent. You know, I think it is really impressive how you survived on Mars alone all this time. I don't think I could have done it. Bob said nothing. The doors of the elevator opened into a giant warehouse full of supplies. There were rows of food and construction supplies. There must be engine wires around here, or at least something we can use. I started walking down the row labeled hardware, and Bob followed. I see a bunch of cables, but they all seem like they are for servers or computer systems. Bob stroked his chin. Where are they keeping the automotive primary wire? It is in the automotive section, said a helpful voice. Bob and I looked around the aisle, and we didn't see anyone. Up here, the voice said again. We both looked up and saw a small, round man with a goatee looking at us. You two must be some of the new mechanical recruits. Bob and I looked at each other. We just got in today. Well, follow me and I will show you where the automotive section is. My name is Jim, and I bet we will be working a lot with each other. He led us to the automotive section and showed us the wires. Take all you need, he said. We should have another shipment coming in a few weeks. Thanks, we appreciate your help, I said while Bob inspected and selected the wires we needed. Do you guys want to see something cool, he asked. We both nodded our heads. What else could we do? He had helped us find what we needed, and we didn't want him to be suspicious of us, so we followed him again. He flicked a switch as we reached the center of the warehouse, and a vehicle started to lower to the floor. You are looking at the latest Mars dune buggy. Oh my goodness, it is beautiful, said Bob. He was already examining the car and taking mental notes. I thought you all might like it. I could tell he was pleased by our reactions. We had acted as a couple of engineer techs should. I heard some commotion coming from my watch and stepped into the other aisle to listen. It looks like those two new recruits aren't taking the Mars chip off too well. They're really struggling to handle the heat, said a feminine voice. It is one of the hottest peppers in existence after all. Will they be okay? Karen sounded a little worried. It wasn't her usual confident voice. Oh yeah, it is kind of like an initiation in the Mars space camp. They will be fine. What a mess those two are making. Should I go intervene? Karen asked. No, don't worry about it. We need the morale boost. What for? I thought everything was going great. I heard typing. See that spot right there? That is a giant sandstorm coming. It looks like we have about 20 minutes before it hits, and after that we will have a week of constant sandstorms. It gets kind of gloomy having to stay inside the pods for more than a few days. No one will be taking off or landing until after it passes. That is why we were all so happy to get the new recruits in when we did. Oh well, that is good to know, she said. I received a text message on my watch that read, Do you hear that, Bigfoot? I quickly replied yes. I had to get to Bob, and we all had to get out of here and back to the spaceship as soon as possible. Karen was probably formulating a plan. I got back to Bob and was about to fill him in on what was going on, but an emergency alarm sounded. What's that? Bob asked Jim. That is the alarm for damage to the pods, Jim started gearing up. We have to get out of here now, Bob, I whispered. A sandstorm is coming and we won't be able to get back home for a week. I have a plan. Follow me. Bob tensed at the words, I have a plan, but he nodded. I ran straight to the dune buggy and jumped in. He was right beside me. I started the ignition and we were off. Jim came to my aid and opened the garage door so we could ride out of the warehouse and into Mars. It is the 5th pod that is having trouble, Jim yelled over the growl of the dune buggy. I nodded and floored it. You know this means we have to help, Bob told me. I shifted into the highest gear. I know, I said. I alerted everyone with my watch. Meet us at pod 5. We flew out of the garage and reached the outside of the base camp. We saw a group gathered by Pod 5. Karen was already on the scene, but Skunk and Yeti hadn't arrived yet. We pulled over next to the pod and made sure our suits were secure. No one even noticed us coming up behind them. I could see that the tarp had come off and we had to fix it quickly. Karen headed towards us at a jog. "What's the situation?" I asked Karen. "The tarp covering on the pod came off. Everyone is trying to fix it, but the wind is picking up because of the sandstorm, and the humans aren't strong enough to fix it on their own. We have to help them, Bigfoot. This is the pod that holds the oxygen generator for the whole facility. If we don't act quickly, this base camp is done for." "Well, let's fix it then and get out of here." I knew we couldn't just abandon the humans. I just hope it didn't cost us our getaway. Yeti and Skunk came up behind us. They were breathing heavily. "What?" Yeti gulped. "The plan." I saw tears were still running down his cheeks from the hot chip, and Skunk had his tongue sticking out trying to get it to cool down. Karen gave them a recap of the situation. All of us sprang into action. We knew what we had to do. "Yeti, you grab the tarp and hold it steady while Bob and Skunk tie the rope around it." Yeti wrestled the tarp down as if he was trying to catch a bear with a fish net. Skunk and Bob started grabbing the rope and wrapping it around the dome. "Karen, get the humans inside. It's not safe out here." At that exact moment, a giant gust of wind blew and almost took the boys with them. I knew Karen could get the astronauts to safety, and I quickly sprang next to Bob and helped him tie the rope around the dome. "The humans are safe. We have to go now. We've got minutes before we need to be on the ship taking off. Everyone get in," I said. Bob leaped into the passenger seat beside me, and the others piled in on the back. Yeti had to stand up because he was so tall. We drove off as fast as we could. "Won't the humans need the dune buggy?" Skunk asked. "Not until after the sandstorm, and they can locate it by GPS. I appreciated Skunk's concern, but now was not the time. The sandstorm was nipping at our heels. I slid to a park beside the spaceship, and we all raced to the ship's engine. "Can you fix it in time?" I asked. "Yeah, I can do it, but I need all of you to stand around the hood to block the wind." We all did as Bob instructed and stood with our backs to the wind to create a shield around him. It took him only a few seconds to rip out the old wires and replace them. "That has to be a new record," said Skunk as we hurried to board the ship. Once on board, Karen checked all the controls, and then we blasted off of Mars. I let out a huge sigh of relief. We had Bob, and we were on our way home. "What's the first thing you are going to do when we get back to Earth?" Yeti asked. Bob thought for a second before he answered. "I'm going to eat pizza, cheeseburgers, and ice cream until I pass out." He smiled and then looked worried. "They still have those things on Earth, right?" Skunk nodded. "Yeah, man, not that much has changed since you left Earth." We were just about to leave Mars' atmosphere when the ship began to shake like it was going to burst into a million pieces. "What's wrong with the ship, Karen? Why is it doing this?" I asked. "Wake capacity reached. Wake capacity reached," said the ship's alert system. She quickly looked at the control panels. "How can that be? I calculated everything before we left." She looked at all of us and then at Bob. "I must have calculated the weight wrong for Mars' gravitational pull. This is bad. We aren't going to make it if we don't do something quickly." Karen looked worried. "Bob, what do we do?" "We need to lighten our load or our engines will blow up and we will never make it back to Earth." "Countdown engaged," said the ship. 10. "Who installed that?" I began to think as fast as I could. There has to be something we could do, something we could get rid of. Then I remembered Bob's anti-gravity device. I reached into my pocket. Thank goodness it was still there. 6. "Bob, do you remember how this works?" I threw him the AGD. "I think so, but how do you have that?" he asked. He fumbled with it, letting his fingers become familiar with the device again. 5. "I don't have time to explain." He nodded, pushed some buttons on it, and turned some dials. I'm glad he knew what he was doing. It would have taken me forever to figure that out. 4. "It's not working," Bob said. He looked panicked. "I don't think I can do this. It's been too long." "It's okay, Bob. Just take a breath. You've got this. Think back to when you first designed it. You can do it." 3, 2, 1. He turned the dial counterclockwise and then pushed a few buttons. Weight capacity normalized. "We are going to make it," Karen announced. I had never been so happy to hear those words. A few seconds later, the ship began to stop shaking. We began to celebrate. "Shoo!" Yeti let out. "I thought we were goners for sure." He clapped Bob on the back. Nice job, Bob. I put the autopilot back on and we looked out the windows and enjoyed the universe. The universe never disappoints, Skunk said as he floated by the window. No, it doesn't, I said. I agree, but I'm tired of space. I can't wait to feel the dirt beneath my feet and the wind in my hair. Bob shook out his hair and looked thoughtful. I wondered what he was imagining. I put my hand on Bob's shoulder. I know there is nothing I can say to make up for the fact that you spent all those years alone, but I am sorry it took so long for me to find you. All that matters now is that you came to find me. It doesn't matter how long it took. There were tears in his eyes, and I felt the moisture in my own. I hugged him, and at that moment, I knew we were good. Yeti came up behind us and gave us a Yeti hug. I'm glad you two finally made up. Now we can all eat pizza and watch TV together. Bob, you will love how many shows there are to watch now, he said, and Bob's eyes lit up. I think we have a lot of great days ahead of us, I said. Agreed, said Karen. I think we have all grown a lot over the years. She elbowed me and I smiled. This is what I had missed the most about not seeing them for 100 years. Our friendship. We continued to float through space as we headed back to Earth. Once we reached Earth's atmosphere, we got an alarming message. Landing gear compromised. Landing gear compromised, the ship said again. We heard you the first time, Karen said. Is there anything on this ship that does work properly? Karen, what do we do? I asked. Karen looked at Bob and he nodded. She looked at the ship's diagnostics on her phone. The only option we have is to try and crash land in the ocean. It's not like anything else can go wrong on this trip. She passed her phone to Bob. Karen, don't jinx us. I don't think I can handle any more, I told her. She's right. Bob showed us Karen's phone. We land in the ocean or we are done for. He tugged on his chin hair. I had thought my trip back to Earth was going to be easier than the one to Mars, but I guess some things don't change. Yeah, they do, I said. Now you have us, and we can crash land together. Bob smiled. All right, Karen, plot the course, and Bigfoot, you steer us home. I did what I was told and laughed. What is it, Bigfoot? Bob asked. I couldn't help but remember episode 35 of Star Journey, when Captain Vert and his crew are about to crash on the unknown planet Xanus. You watched Star Journey? Bob asked, surprised. We all did, Yeti said. And we loved it. Skunk made the Star Journey sign and Bob made the sign back. I don't know what is going on with you four. We are having a moment, Karen, Yeti said as he wiped his eye. I am glad, but if your moment lasts much longer, this will be our last moment. That got our attention. I grabbed the joystick. I was going to have to concentrate if I was going to land us safely in the ocean. Okay, as soon as we reach the stratosphere, I need you to pull up hard. That should set us on the course to the ocean. We all held our breath as we waited for more of Karen's instructions. Now, Bigfoot, now, pull up. I did as I was told. The gauges on the control center were going haywire. I was sweating so much that Skunk had to dab my forehead. We broke through the atmosphere and I could feel the heat coming off the ship as we plunged toward the Earth. Is it supposed to feel this hot? I asked. The protective heat shields are melting, Karen replied. Eyes on the prize, Bigfoot. We are almost home. I nodded. I can see the ocean now. I think we pulled it off, I said. Before we could celebrate, I heard the sputter of the engine and then it sounded like it spit something out. What was that? Karen looked at her phone. It looks like the ship is breaking apart. She squeezed my shoulder so hard I winced. We sped closer and closer to the ground. The ocean was seconds away. I wanted so badly to close my eyes and not open them until we landed, but I forced myself to stare straight ahead. We had come this far and we couldn't give up now. I pulled up hard one last time in an attempt to soften our landing. We crashed into the ocean like a missile, and the sound it made was deafening. After my ears stopped ringing, I looked around to find that the ship had been completely dismantled and was sinking to the bottom of the ocean. We were all floating on our seat cushions, staring at each other in disbelief. We're alive, I said to the whole gang. Karen dunked my head underwater, and we all laughed. Earth is even more beautiful than I remember, Bob said as he swam around like a synchronized swimmer. We all looked at each other and laughed. This was the first time in 100 years that we had all been together on Earth. Not exactly the landing I was going for, I said. Yeah, try to be a little gentler next time, Karen snorted. Skunk popped up out of the water. Yeti, I know that's you touching my foot. Sharks don't have fur, you knucklehead, Skunk said. We looked at Yeti, who was clearly just floating there. That's not me, Skunk, Yeti said. We all put our heads in the water to see what it was. We all screamed. This couldn't be real, but here was an underwater Bigfoot waving to us to follow her below the water. We went above the surface again and saw a few military ships closing in on our location. They must have seen our spaceship crash. What should we do, Bigfoot? Karen asked. We can't be discovered by the military. We'll be science experiments for sure. I thought for a second and then looked over at Bob. It's your call, Bob. What do you want to do? Bob smiled. I guess the pizza is going to have to wait till later. And with that said, we dove underwater to our next adventure.